In this video, we're going to continue with our series taking a look at figure posing apps that are going to help us better learn about anatomy and also help us better craft our character illustrations and paintings. We've previously looked at something for manga artists. Now we're going to take a look at something geared more towards comic book artists with Art Pose Pro. This figure posing app is a little bit more basic relative to other ones on the market, but the lack of bells and whistles means the app is relatively easy to learn and is best suited for comic book or storyboard artists who are simply looking for a quick pose to reference rather than something very specific or detailed. There are only two models available, one female, one male, both of which have very heroic physiques and proportions. The amount of athleticism for each model can be adjusted from being very lean, very Catwoman or Spider-Man-like, to being more extreme Hulk-like or Amazonian physiques. Whilst there isn't a lot of customization, you do have the useful option to switch to the figure's underlying muscle layer. If you're having difficulty figuring out how a muscle is supposed to look in a particular position, then this option really does come in handy. There's a couple of hairstyle options as well to choose from, but no real costume options to clothe your figure. Puppeteering the model is relatively intuitive. Simply tap on the joint and drag one figure either vertically or horizontally across the screen to change the forward, back or side to side actions. In order to activate the twisting action, you'll need to do a 2-finger horizontal slide across the screen. There's no specific access joint controls to do more precise directional movements like in other apps. However, this app does respond extremely well to even the lightest of screen touches, so subtle adjustments are not really an issue. If you're trying to get the limbs looking the same, there's a very useful mirror option to save you the hassle of eyeballing things. In terms of built-in presets, there's an entire library of well over 200 stock poses available. These poses aren't categorized in any way, so you don't have much option other than to scroll through the list to find the pose that you're looking for. You'll find that some of the presets will still have to be adjusted even after being selected, especially for the female model. Included also are a series of props including furniture, outdoor scenery, and a selection of weapons. The outdoor scenery props in particular are a very useful addition that you won't find in other posing apps. So if you're having issues with outdoor or landscape illustrations, this is a very handy option to have. The camera controls are pretty standard alongside the ability to change the perspective depth. If you want to save your camera's current settings, there are 5 slots available to save to. Simply tap and hold one of the slots, wait for it to turn green, and your camera's position and settings will be saved for future use. For lighting control, there are 2 lighting options, a directional source and a reflective light source, both of which can have their color adjusted. As with the camera settings, there are 5 slots available for your lighting settings as well. There are also options for converting the model to simplified light and shadow value shapes, and also the option to matte your model if all you need is its silhouette. With your pose and scene done, it's now time to export. Simply tap the camera option on the top right hand corner to save the image. The app automatically exports both a flattened and transparent version of the scene. There are no size options available, but the final rendered PNG files are large enough for most purposes. So are there any drawbacks? Well, probably the biggest drawback is simply the lack of body types and customization. As mentioned, the proportions of the figure are very heroic, so that's great for all the superhero comic book artists, but it's a lot more limiting for everyone else. The hands are also an issue in that there's no ability to adjust the fingers and thumb individually. Other apps allow for far more hand customization, but here all you have to work with are about 15 presets. There's also an issue with the on-screen navigation. Other posing apps have the ability to pose the model and move the camera around without having to do any additional steps. In Art Pose Pro, however, you have to switch back and forth between pose mode and camera mode to make your adjustments. As easy as the app is to use, this mode switching makes for a very stop-start and sometimes very frustrating experience. But if you're able to deal with those setbacks, Art Pose Pro is a very solid app for those looking for a quick reference to help with their illustrations. Realistic painters, cartoonists, and manga artists might find the app lacking, but comic book artists, storyboard illustrators, and concept artists are likely to find use in what it has to offer. It has easy to use posing controls, a bunch of useful props, and is available on iPad, Android, and PC.